Welcome to the third episode. I'm just waiting for Meticulous Prime, when he comes in. Um, I'm just going to summarize kind of where we've gotten to, because we're now talking about the world system. So the world as a system of flows between nodes, so that material, wealth, people flow between the nodes of the world system, and the node is like country, port, and that those flows take place within the terrain of the world, and so it's really important. And so we really dug into deep geology to show that the way that the shape of the world shapes what we can do, so that long before optionality arrives for us, before we consider optionality, those options have been constrained by the world itself. And that's all I'm saying. Okay. Sometimes people might think that that's determinism, but what we're talking about here is there are some aspects of things which we cannot change. We can change our approach to them with technology, but those things are there. They're not changeable. Yeah. Um, and then somebody might say, well, what happens if you can remove a mountain? Well, if you destroy the mountain, then the mountain is no longer a constraint. But the conditions the conditions in geological history that gave you the mountain is also would have given you um, related, let's say, structures, and those structures are still disciplining the way that you move through the world. And so, that itself restricts the possibilities or the optionality that you have to move within the system. And we're talking about terrain. We're also talking about terrain from the perspective of cycles. So weather cycles, okay, longer durée cycles, like um, you know severe hurricanes every 10 years or every 25. Right? These are all parts of what changes the system, and pressures the the movement of flows within the system. So that's just a kind of, yeah. I'm just thought I should give you some of the background to how we got here, and the rest of it's been just deep geology. Handing over to Meticulous.
I joined late, unfortunately, because I couldn't figure out how to get in. So I'm not going to belabor this, but there's an aspect in there that I'd have liked to ask about. Um, I'll just ask it. But you don't have to answer because we have a different agenda for today. But how would you defend this approach if anyone were to say, you know how, for instance, Kant, among many of the leading European intellectuals and uh, um, light poles of the Western intellectual tradition, he would say, like many other contemporaries, that the climate may be responsible for the laziness of Africans as a whole, for example, and then sort of applying a climatic um, principle to
Yeah.
how
Right.
civilizations evolve culturally and
Well,
maybe
I
even
just I just think that
physiologically.
kind of comment
Mm.
is observationally and demonstrationally so asinine that, despite the fact that he might be Kant, I recognize there are some aspects of Kantian thought in which he's just a jackass, right?
That's
Literally,
facts. That's
right?
facts. But here, really, the
And
question
and
is,
hold on, no, hold on.
mhm,
And so when they come to me with those kinds of arguments, right, and they came to me to provide an argument to it, right, often sometimes imputing less intelligence or whatever, and so on. I then I think there's just a contradiction in terms that it's not really worth my reply, right? And I would say to them, go and read my work
mm,
because I am not obligated to deal with jackasses, right? Jackasses, maybe jackasses should go and pull a donkey cart or whatever, but don't come to me with that kind of nonsense,
mm,
right? Because if you're taking Africans to make them slaves on plantation, you can't believe that they're lazy, right? That kind of that is what we call jackassicity, right? It's so damn stupid that I why would I reply to that? And why would you expect me to feel embarrassed or harmed by your stupidity? You have just revealed yourself a jackass. And it's possible because sometimes people are jackasses in one sphere and quite sensible in others. I don't remove myself from that. But if you're a jackass, I'm gonna call you a jackass. Right? I don't can't waste my time, right? Because basically, if Kant had said that to me in my face, I would have put his argument down and then slap his ass
mm,
for insulting my mother and my father. You
mm.
understand? I
Mhm.
slap him and then benefiting from it and then producing that kind of argument. I would slap him for two reasons: for insulting them and also insulting his damn self. Right?
That's not one time, two times. So it's a slap for every
Yeah.
sort
And
of
I remember that he wasn't very robust either, so I might have slapped him easy. Right? But he wasn't. Historically, he wasn't the most robust example
of
of who. Yeah.
Prussian superiority. Well, so this was so funny. So here we are today. I don't know if you've announced it, but being in the, I mean, I don't know if the answer satisfies my question though, but
No,
that's
you
what.
could. I mean, we will deal with that over time. I mean, I just gave you the example of the African Great Lakes
Mm-hmm,
a few back. And I mean that explains a lot of. I think that with people you have to understand.
mm,
You really have to want to understand, or you have to want to investigate what their actual circumstances are,
mm,
and not attempt to judge them by the standards by which you judge yourself. In the
mm,
sense that if you come from a completely different cultural context, you need to understand who's in front of you. Now,
yes.
now often, now often, the lenses for understanding that were the lenses that were employed to justify domination and extraction.
Mm,
Right, and that's very prevalent in Kant. Okay,
mm. I see why you'd say that.
yeah. But
Mm,
anyway, I mean, I don't like wasting time with it. I don't like to waste time
with these kinds
with
of
those
things,
there because I think it's a waste of time and I think it's stupid. I think the
especially.
arguments the arguments are stupid. I've even read Marx
Mm.
when Marx gets to that, and I look at it and I go, but you really disappointed me. I mean, because I expected you to at least do your homework, and at that point, I want to say at least do your effing homework,
Yeah,
and
but
and it's obvious that and it's obvious that some of it he has done, but he hasn't done the homework on his home.
that's funny. A
Mhm.
home he never left. Speaking of Kant, um, which might he might have otherwise given us some information about the South China Sea and the East China Sea, which is where this conversation is now heading, because that is where the key variables and key factors of the world war the active current world war that we're in, that dares not name itself, is headed. We're going to the South China Sea. We've already arrived there. There are blockades of passage lanes already, uh, with the Chinese island system that they've put in, um, between the islands, the major islands. And the situation is escalating rather quickly. Last week, or I think it was week before, you said that the geostructural antecedents of the coordination mechanisms and governance models in the economic and the um, the trading responses that we as a species have developed in that region, you suggested that the Strait of Malacca was next. And
Okay.
since that day, things have evolved rapidly towards that. And
Okay.
China, a major actor, uh, has also been acting in ways that one couldn't, one kind of dual use actions that might be defensive in nature, but also forward lining some
Okay.
of their positions.
Okay. So, the entrance to the China Sea is the Malacca corridor.
Exactly.
You either have to block exit from the Malacca corridor or entrance into it.
Mm-hmm.
That's your control. Any movement, any relaxation of Hormuz will will as it is relaxed will instigate an increase in the anxiety about the street, about the about what is going to occur next, what is likely to occur next at the Malacca Street that corridor, that the Malacca Strait corridor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What you're saying is doubly important. I don't know if it's just me, but I have the impression what you're saying is, even if the U.S. were to lose battles or for longer periods of time at Hormuz, the blockade, say, has been lifted through some battle ingenuity or turn of events by Iran, still Malacca would be a zone, would be the next valve being fought over.
Okay. So the control of Hormuz controls 80% of the energy needs
Of
of the East, right?
yes.
So that passes from the Indian Ocean into the South China Sea.
Mm-hmm.
So control of that valve is is an important leverage point.
Yes.
So the Americans they cannot win at Hormuz, right? They have lost. What they are what they are delaying are the consequences of their loss.
Why do you say the latter part? Because you said quite a number of things. The part I'd like to zoom in on is delaying, a fait
By
accompli.
keeping the conflict open, they keep open the question of their loss
That is
and
a.
the consequences which result from that.
Why do you focus? Why do you? I'm not. I'm not doubting it. My question is not one doubting. It's really an investigative one. Why, technically, do you? How do you justify presenting the status quo as a fait accompli, saying they have already lost? Because my second question is, how do you reckon it's a delay? But my first question is, how do you justify diagnosing that it is a loss, it is a defeat?
Because they cannot win, right? To win, you have to be able to dominate and control the not only the strait but the region around the strait,
Give us some criteria, is
right?
what I wanted to say.
So to do that, you
Mm.
would basically have to destroy and subordinate Iranian power. That is not possible. Okay? so that
but I'm laughing because that is the discourse that they've been putting in the public sphere, the discourse of victory and subjugation.
that's why they have to keep it open, because by
That's
keeping it open, then they can, for as long as it's open, they can maintain that. But once it closes, who controls the strait is clear. Okay,
mm,
and they cannot control the strait. They can block it from outside it, but they're not damn well going in.
hmm
Okay, so unless
but
they
but
can,
but
so
the problem.
unless
But speak on
unless
that. Okay, that's the delay, I guess. Okay. Hmm.
okay, so unless they can occupy Iran, they cannot win.
And that's never going to happen.
Well, they
Nobody in
can
their
try.
right mind. Mm.
They can try. All right,
Mm. They
but
don't have enough
what they're
robots.
doing is that they're not trying and they're not closing. So by that you can keep the arguments going, and you hold everyone hostage, including the Iranians. So it's almost like who blinks first. Okay.
Hence your conclusion that they're delaying the
Yeah,
inevitable.
yeah. They're delaying. I mean, if they are talking about joint control of the strait and all of that, the, they, their strategists know that those situations are not possible.
Why not?
Um, because of the degree of battlefield loss. The Iranians have won. Basically, the Americans cannot destroy their um, their underground military infrastructure. They don't know the extent of it,
Yes.
all right, because it's underground. And sorry, I know we're not actually talking about the main
Hmm.
matter. Um, and so, and they cannot maintain the bases that they have. They have to draw back. They have lost.
Mm.
Okay, so the now you're moving back to the next strategic leverage point. And my identification of the next strategic leverage point is the Strait of Malacca, and for the reasons that I described in the last
Mm.
um, in the world system part two. So
Hmm.
in terms of the grammar of of this kind of geostrategy on this lower geological layer and the constraints that it gives, I'm saying that the that that the American response at present at Hormuz amounts to a badly formed sentence.
Hmm.
Yes, in an argument that required eloquence.
Hmm. Or in an argument that would have required restraint altogether. Things, as you pointed out at the very beginning, I won't forget that because you were so upset. Said things were working out perfectly. The place was open, but
And
Trump
they
had
had control.
and they had control.
And they had control. They actually had control of the strait.
You don't tip
So,
over your own advantages and then get to complain about it, about losing it
yes.
all
Yes, they had control. The Iranians did not have control. The Americans had control
in quantifiable terms.
in quantifiable terms. They effectively had their military along it. They could declare. I mean, their leverage had not been tested, so
The
so people,
leverage had not been tested.
people were responding to them as the controller of the strait, not the Iranians. So what they did is that they made their leverage testable,
Mm.
and the gold turned out to be brass.
That's
And
the
now
situation.
nobody's going to accept the currency.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Perfectly said.
Yeah. So I'm saying that now the pressure moves along. On the South China side,
Mm-hmm.
it's perhaps too late. So the question is whether they will try on the Indian Ocean side first,
Mm-hmm.
or they will go straight for Singapore. The problem with that is that that is exposed. The
That
further back you go, is the less exposed you are. Yeah. So
when you say
it is
further
perceived.
back, hold on. When you say further, oh, exposed to China's domination of that region.
Well, they're exposed to Chinese retaliation within the region.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the wise, perhaps, one of the strategic military calculations would be to stop to leverage control at the entrance to the strait, but the entrance to the strait is wider.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but if effectively what we've seen is that, oh God, we're almost half an hour. We
Mm-hmm.
haven't gone into the actual thing.
But we're
Um,
close. We're close.
so basically at the entrance of the strait,
Mm-hmm.
it's much wider. But in order to control, what you do is you threaten insurance. So it is the
Mm-hmm.
insurance company. You threaten the conditions that make that insurance. Um, what do you call that branch of mathematics that works that out? Whatever, I can't remember right now. Yeah,
I see what you're saying. Not probabilism, but
it's yeah.
stochasticism.
I can't remember the name.
It,
Whatever. So
stochastics.
no, it's not stochastics. Doesn't matter. But
Okay.
it is that space where you calculate the probabilities of what will occur, and
Mm.
so if they want, basically what we have seen in two conflicts is that you if you want to control shipping or you want to affect shipping, you control the risk space.
Mm-hmm.
You don't stop it. You control the risk space, and then insurance becomes expensive, and it reduces the amount of traffic.
Yes. Which is what we had before the U.S. blockade.
Hmm.
I mean, that was what we had before Trump recently decided to go and blockade, become himself an obstruction. And
Yeah, yeah,
the
but and
U.S.
also what that does is that also then restricts the risk space. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so so yeah, because basically what has happened is that the United States isn't what in that risk space. United States intervention is no longer trusted as a stabilizing force.
Mm-hmm. Important. So that is one clear domain in which that victory has become absolutely mythological.
Yeah, the Iranians have this. When I say this is a strategic defeat of the United States, it's an utter strategic defeat.
Yes.
They haven't won anything,
Yes.
and they lost more than they knew they risked.
They lost more than, and this is where let's zoom in on the topography of the region because maybe some answers will come to us through that concern. The
Well, I want to
region,
move. I want to move to the South China Sea.
South China Sea, much better. So the South China Sea is at the bottom of our conversation. The argument is geology will tell you what constraints and options humans living there will operate under.
Yes,
And the South
or must operate under.
must operate, must. So this is where you then say, and yet, and still, we're not talking about determinism in the sociological realm. We're talking about determinism in the spatial construction.
I'm saying that if you have to navigate mountains with one mountain pass,
Mm-hmm.
then you can come up with all sorts of ideas, you still have to go through that mountain pass,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Or
Mhm.
if you even if you fly over, the reason flying over is more expensive than going through the pass, right?
Yes.
And for
Mhm.
exactly so you're still stuck with the pass. That's what I'm saying. If there are rivers there, you're stuck with the rivers. The
Mhm.
rivers aren't going anywhere. You have to
Mhm.
negotiate that.
Mhm.
And I always find it very strange that the need to emphasize human agency requires that you deny the determinism of the terrain. I think it's a specific kind of insanity.
I think it's a disciplinary. It's a protective. The universities create disciplines that have to define their limits of validity, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore, when other such um, macroscopic variables are brought into analysis, there's a knee-jerk reaction by minds trained in their confined, deliberately confined disciplinary paradigm. Then suddenly this variable comes in and it's too big. We're not concerned with that. Would be the, I think, the
But
clinical answer.
I think Heidegger, when he talks about thinking,
Mm,
I think it's really important that we think,
mm,
and that that procedural disciplines
mhm.
do not act in place of thinking.
Oh, procedural disciplines. Yeah,
Yeah, because often what happens is the procedural discipline acts in place of thinking.
that is a podcast conversation for on and off itself, in and of
Yeah,
itself.
and that comes back to the question that you brought up to me with Kant,
Mm-hmm.
right? My criticism of that kind of lazy kind of thought is
Mm-hmm.
that it is actually not thinking. Okay, um, so in looking at the at South China Sea,
Mm-hmm.
you come to a sea that so you come out of Singapore and you enter a sea that has it has its borders, and its borders are the Philippines and Japan.
Yes.
Okay, and those are volcanic islands which emerge when the plates hit into each other. So the China plate hits the Philippine and the Pacific plate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so then you get the uprising, the subduction, and the uprising of mountain terrain, and you get volcanoes. And when that kind of thing happens, you always bring up rather rich mineral deposits
Mm-hmm.
as that happens. Okay, so it will also tell you that often in the region you are going to find fairly rich mineral deposits.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now what that sea is is the actual continental China slipping under those two plates. Okay,
Yes.
so it is land that has become sea, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
With a widening on a north south widening based upon how the Earth's mantle then expanded
Yes.
the seabed. Okay,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so then on to the north of that is the Chinese coast going on to Korea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then you come around and
Right.
excellent. Thank you so much.
Let me see. Let me see. Well, I'm not far up enough.
Oh no, that's perfect.
Is that good enough?
Yeah, because we can see the South China Sea between Indonesia, Philippines, yeah, and then you can see the Pacific Ocean, and you know that China is just above that. So if you come down
Mm-hmm.
a bit, if you come down a bit, just
Well,
come down a bit. No, just
I
come down.
need a different. Can you see?
No, no, this the actual map you had is pretty good actually.
It's good enough. Okay, let me
Yeah,
see.
it's good enough. Good, just come down a bit. Just come. Yeah, you can see China.
Excellent.
Yeah, So you go, so South China Sea enters. So when they talk about the island chains, right? So you got
Mm-hmm.
Indonesia, Philippines, and Taiwan
Mm-hmm.
as a first, locking them into the South China Sea,
Mm-hmm.
right? With exits from the South China Sea either through between Taiwan and the Philippines or between Taiwan and China.
Yes.
Okay, so that's one is the Taiwan Strait and so on. So you can see how that sea is, and there are lots of islands actually in the South China Sea. As I said, it's actual continental rock, but it's
Mm-hmm.
deep. It's deep. It is deeper than the Sunderland.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a fairly it in that sense. It's a deep sea.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then you can move a bit to the east again.
Mm-hmm.
Good, and come down a bit more.
Further down.
Aha. Okay. No, we can't see the East China Sea.
Mm. Let me
Okay.
try and I see what you're saying. Yeah. Let me try and figure that one out quickly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then what you have so the South China Sea, you pass on the South China Sea and you pass into the East China Sea, and these are different seas, and they are different seas because they are actually based upon different geological formations. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and and actually, to talk about the East China Sea is better to go and talk about China first.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, um, China itself, yeah, China itself is is an ancient continent, and its core is formed of the smashing together of three masses. You know,
Mm-hmm.
three masses which could have been the seed of continents themselves.
All right.
Okay, and so they smash together, and so you get every time when they smash it, you get mountains, right?
Subduction. Mm-hmm.
You get the subduction, you get the 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 drawing up of deep minerals, etc., and they get locked into the mantle and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that what you're dealing with in China is because of that, a very rich land already.
Mm-hmm.
And then 50 million years ago, India comes up and smashes into Eurasia. Because this Chinese mass itself had smashed into Eurasia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so i- what you have with China is it's protected by mountains around it. But when India comes and smashes into Eurasia, and India is subducted, is slipping under the Eurasian mass, it raises up and it raises up the highest mountains in the world, which is the Himalayas.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so what that so then as that's welded, it also welds China, right? But it also
Yes.
produces another set of mountains. So in China, you get this three step. It's got three steps, right? So it's like three steps.
Mm-hmm.
So the highest being in the Himalayas, which is why the Chinese have have taken control of Tibet,
Mm-hmm.
because they want to ensure that they have control of the headwaters or the ice, etc., that waters them,
Mm-hmm.
lower down, because the Himalayas waters also India, right? The waters flow down. You places like Nepal, all of these places, the Mekong, they all come from Himalayan water.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so because the mountains are so high, as the as the water which evaporates from the sea comes and is in the air, in the air, hits the mountain, it then either rains or turns into snow, and
Yes.
and then is released in the spring. And
Mm-hmm.
when that's released in the spring, you get tremendous amounts of water coming down the river right? So
Mm-hmm.
you got
Mm-hmm.
all of those rivers in India and Pakistan also are generally watered by this, and so you get vast amounts, and so you have issues with intermittent flooding,
Mm-hmm.
right? But because of the force of the waters, it brings a lot of silt downstream, so that you get very rich agricultural lands.
Yes.
So that what you're dealing with China is not only a land which is naturally walled off by its geography, but is also is also rich with enough variety in soil types to allow the growing of a wide variety of crops.
Yes.
And it is a large mass enough, which is also because if you want to come in to China from the west, you have to cross mountains that are basically impassable for major armies.
Mm-hmm. That's
Yeah.
going to be hopefully not, but I think that's going to be one of the important things to watch if this madness continues on a bound of expansion and escalation.
Well, nobody's crossing those mountains with an army. That would be.
Well,
I mean, you'd have to be yeah, you'd have to be smoking a lot more than weed to try that. Yeah.
maybe we must. How about American exceptionalism? How about that brand?
Well, this is called constraints.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about places where -40 is not unknown,
Yes.
right? So you could have and the air is thin. Nobody's going up there.
Mm-hmm.
It's too thin. You need gas masks.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's going up there. So that's not going to happen. Um,
Yes.
and then from the north there are deserts, and that's and beyond that is Russian territory. Some of it disputed.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you. Good.
Well, but this is not what you're speaking on right now. I'll
Okay.
wait a little.
And then so you get these vast amounts of water coming down,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's a very rich terrain, but it's an unstable terrain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you in one area you've got if you're on the coast in places like Hainan, you're going to get monsoons equivalent of
Mm-hmm.
hurricanes.
Mm-hmm.
If you're up in some of the the areas in the first step, you'll get floods. Second, huge floods, um, and then droughts towards the north. And so, um, because it stands as a natural mass, whoever governs that mass also has to get also has to basically guarantee relief services for those people who are in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so when you see the Chinese talking about the mandate of heaven,
Mm-hmm.
you have to remember that in terms of
Mm-hmm.
the kind of survival coordination that that terrain requires,
Mm-hmm.
right? Those kinds of ideas, they they do they do really reflect the kind of terrain out of which they emerge.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. And so you have to remember that whoever rules China has to guarantee the provision of that of the kind of survival coordination labor.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that's hardwired, and it's going to shape the types of government or governance which they have. And I often find um, Western descriptions or Western assumptions about types of government quite naive, you know,
Why? Why is that?
because Western assumptions assume that that government type is independent of terrain consequences.
Oh, this would be at the heart of what you're saying.
Yes, and I'm saying that that is not very smart. All right, I mean, yeah, Oh, and hello, good morning, Billy Bumble. Thank you for coming.
Do
Yeah,
you recognize this is China?
yeah, but I can't
And
really see nothing there, man.
it's basically it's a geology with all the mountain names and the regional sort of
Yeah, but
topological.
I can't see China. I mean, I
I mean,
can't make out
it's
China.
this whole
I can
thing,
see the North China one. I can see the Tibetan plateau. Yeah.
right?
Okay. All right.
And then continues with climatic consequences, or typically,
Oh, thank you. That's useful, right?
you see. Mm-hmm.
So now you can see why this place is. You can see where the agriculture is going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Kunming is really beautiful if you have a chance to go. Um, yeah, you can see the climate, and you can see where agriculture is going to happen, and you can see why, with those extremes, that China has historically been ruled in the way that it has, i.e., that
Mm-hmm.
you need
Mm-hmm.
to have a lot of coordination. Yeah. You- So so you find that the Chinese always had large bureaucracies
Mm-hmm.
and large grain stores, right? You cannot rule this place without, and so you'll find that the Chinese have a habit of large buffers,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you know what I'm talking about, how buffer nodes tend to encourage um, processing,
Yes.
right? It more or less begins to explain how, because Chinese are known to be um, very technologically adept
Yes.
historically, and that's part of why, because you end up with a lot of buffers, a habit of buffers, and then a habit of craft, and also the experience of China itself as a self-contained world.
Mm.
So you have this idea of autarky, which people talk about, which is the idea of self-sufficiency. Well, China is one of those places where you can have the idea of self-sufficiency and fulfill it.
This is absolutely interesting because from anyone that has any understanding of China, they can explain to you, or they can tell you that China has historically, and this is a 3,000, 4,000 year thing, uh, seen itself as a central actor, and this is reflected in this what one hears often about its name, where the Chinese will say we are called Shangguo, the reign or the rule of the center, and we're surrounded by barbarians of the north, barbarians of the east, barbarians of the south, and barbarians of the west.
Yeah,
Which,
well, anybody who's not Chinese are barbarian, right?
and I mean, that's what derives from this Shangguo narrative, which is, I mean, let's face it, historically, Mongols have come, a variety of invasions, including from Europe, have come, and the Han Chinese are still saying we're still who we are, autonomous in our thinking and in the design of our
Um,
social institutions.
because you have to remember that China is not the idea of China
The
with
others
that
come
math
and
that you're
go.
talking
We
about
stay.
is not a single ethnicity,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is a polity made up of many ethnicities,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, who with a culture of integration, so the capacity to integrate others into themselves,
Mm-hmm.
at also at the level of not even destroying the language and the cultural specificity of that group.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a peculiar kind of polity that sees itself as a world, okay, and has a politics that emerges out of that. And so historically, when the Mongols came, and this is the point, historically, whoever came was absorbed.
Let's explore. Let's drill deeper into this aspect if we take the
Okay.
time. Because there's so many questions from the model that we have in the writings
Yeah.
and archives of dystopia en masse collected
But
writings.
I want to stay with the world system because I feel like we've kind
We'll
of
stay there.
we've really drifted.
We'll we'll stay in. All right, let's go back to the. All right, I understand. Let's zoom out. You're saying because I was about to zoom in.
We need to stay as long as it's within the world system and
Yeah.
its grammar, fine. Because we really deviated.
Well, I was going to look at the coordinative, the effect of the geology on the coordinative actor that we know China to be. So the effect of its geology, and the question I was going to put to you was um, whether you could highlight some more of how China's current set of options and the behavior we have come to expect from China when we look at it operate in the past 50 years, 80 years, as a matter of fact. That China that we've observed for such a long time, how are the circumstances of its geolocation influencing this evolution of China that we've observed?
But I think we have to. Okay, so what has happened is that
And if you can, throw in the Melanie Klein model if it's
yeah, but no, but that doesn't. I mean, we're here with that's psychopolitics. I don't want to bring psychopolitics
that goes
into.
too far.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I don't want to bring that in.
That goes too far.
Okay. Okay, so basically, with what you're looking at with China is that because you have this state that is required to be a buffer node, so that in terms of the Chinese, the silver tile, right? Because of its history, it has a it has it has a history of storage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then and this also brings a history of processing. So technological depth has historically been part of the Chinese habit, right? So things like
Hold on. I'd like
gunpowder,
to hold on to this. The expression the
porcelain.
Chinese habit, we might have said the American habit, we might have said the German habit, or to
No, but we're
any
talking about China.
I know, but I'm sort of saying,
Mhm.
is that a technical, conceptual, analytical tool that we're using here? When you say the Chinese, you
Okay,
know,
no, no. What I'm saying
habit,
here,
is it a
what I'm saying here,
conceptual container?
what I'm saying here is that once you get a buffer with sufficient depth,
Mm-hmm.
what tends to come next is processing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when I'm talking about, I'm saying that in the world you're going to see processing depth at those points where things tend to accumulate. That is likely to occur, right? And in the Chinese, that occurred with enough depth and enough duration, right, for the Chinese to be described by the people who historically encountered them as as being technologically adept.
Alex, this every single word you've said in the last cluster of explanatory effort you made here has been deeply, deeply revelatory for an entirely other subject matter. But as you spoke and deepened the clarification of what you were saying, I was looking at the African continent. It was just the more you spoke, the more that the problem magnified itself. Locuses of buffer zones become locuses of accumulation. If the resource for the flow is located somewhere there will be accumulation. And with accumulation, you say it would make sense to expect and observe evolution into processing. Let's have a look at the continent.
Well,
It
we're looking
has,
at China. Okay, okay. So please don't let's go too far. So I don't mind spending a little
I'm,
time.
I'm staying with what the technique suggests can become readable. The technique suggests to recognize the situation on the African continent as a peculiar expression of that itinerary, but perhaps even a deviation, because you have accumulation You have happenstance occurrence of geostrategically important minerals in demand, and that accumulation has not transformed into processing. And if you look into why, you'll find meddling, intervention, hegemony.
I think that if you're judging Africa, you really have to take longue durée history.
Yes,
You can't,
exactly. Hmm.
yeah, yeah, so you can't take short history. So I'm not looking at those 500 years in which um, Kant can come up with his conclusions.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm looking at wider history. Okay.
Let's apply this
Um,
back to South China and East China.
so
Not trying to be.
exactly, yeah, yeah. Um, so I'm saying that in that kind of node, that's what you're going to that's what you're going to tend to see, right? You're going to tend to see a deepening of processing occurring there,
I have your
right?
book here. I have your book here, and you define buffer. You say a buffer is a node that introduces time into flow, enables accumulation, sequencing, and processing. It introduces time into flow, so time management. It enables accumulation, sequencing, and processing, which fall under survival coordination. It's one mode of survival coordination.
Yes, it is one mode of survival, but this, remember that survival coordination in the system is very specific. Survival coordination is what is needed to actually survive. Oh, this is
Mm-hmm.
beyond survival. This is now just coordination,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, depending upon the kind of governmental structures and so on, and communitarian structures that you develop to survive the terrain that you are in, then that shapes the kind of po- the beyond survival polity shape that you can have,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that so one of the things you find is that in the Chinese system, there was a very strong decision to, it seems, anthropological decision, sociological decision
Mm-hmm.
to organize by family groups. Okay, but
Mm-hmm.
it also requires um, accumulation and administration of that accumulation to deal with relief.
Yes.
So you find so you have a society organized around obligations to family
Mm-hmm.
and then obligations to state. And so what you find is that the state tends to be quite harsh in when what we would call corruption, which means that family, in terms of a lot of times, family obligations begin to interfere with state obligations and state rationale,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
And that remains a constant feature across Chinese history.
It's fascinating. This would give me some. I'm not too well versed in Chinese philosophy. Um, the analects, of course, I've looked into that, but then I've also seen some things about from Sun Tzu and Mo Tzu in particular, Mo Tzu, who had that as his central sort of paradigmatic anthropology, which is if you look at how families operate, there is a model there to be emulated by the state level. For
Yeah.
in families, different nodes are benevolent to one another, and that the degree to which benevolence within a family can be increased will mirror the degree of wealth of that family system.
Yes. Yes.
Therefore, states should take an example on these non monetary uh, uh, services that family members render one another in the pursuit of their mutual harmony. That would
Yes.
create peace and wealth and harmony in the state between states. And
But
notes.
can you see how the anxieties that are present in Mao
Hmm.
Tse's work reflect the terrain that he's from.
I mean, I see it in in your lens now, the way you're seeing it. I never thought of it prior to this
Mhm.
as connected in that way. You
Yeah.
know.
Okay. So one of the things that we are dealing with is it's like the Chinese approach to rare earths was actually predictable. Now that
Mm.
you go through the grammar of the world system in that way,
Hmm.
right? Their approach to world to rare earths is predictable, right? To sacrifice um to sacrifice for the acquisition of processing depth, all right, and then to clean it up, because autarky is part of their sense of self, right? And that, are you not going to strip that out? Because if you look at their history,
Hmm.
you can see they might deviate from it for a short period, but the pressure is always to go back there.
Because of the survival needs.
Because not only the survival needs, but they have done so repeatedly over time. So there then develops a depth of that of that coordination style. So when problems come, right, or a disaster comes, it's very natural to turn around and say, well, it's because we didn't do that. Right?
I
That makes
mean,
sense?
I'm thinking about so many aspects of what you're saying. I don't even know which one to hold on to. But how would that, for example, be different from the Cartesian rationality driven collectivities? How would that differ? Because they also look at
You need to tell me what you mean.
what I mean is, so the Cartesian model is the analytical approach, which would say things are composed of these and those factors. You break everything down for comprehension and for control and mastery. So if a calamity accrues to you, you will immediately run back to your prior established observations and see how you could overlook that calamity.
But which the point here is that which system of rationality and logic is not all systems of rationality and logic are based upon observation of the world
Yes, but
and the assumption that there is enough stability that your observational pattern could be predictive. So I think every people do that,
mhm,
right?
mhm. And there are different angles to this predictive sort of behavior information through predictive analysis.
And I'm saying that you cannot separate the development of that way of seeing the world from its terrain.
This is such a Latin, the sentence is full. You cannot separate habits, tendencies, uh, modus operandi of a collective from the terrain in which it has established itself.
Yes, and the way that they have negotiated that terrain repeatedly, this is why I used the word habit, okay?
You know, I'm sorry, it just it just crossed my mind. Sort of, the Nazis would love this explanation. The Blut and Boden. We are bound together by blood, and we are bound together by belonging to this soil and this terrain which we know from our ancestry to today. An unbroken continuity of
Uh,
genetic and
okay,
ethnic
okay.
identity with
The one thing that I would say about the Nazis is that the part of the problem that they were negotiating was the fact that Germany had never really been a unified state,
yeah, 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 yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And so what you're looking at is a projection
Very
to the idea of um what's it
togetherness.
no is that we have this ancient history. I mean,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know, we are ancient and there's an unbroken connection to it. it
Yes.
it is it is a projection upon an anxiety that
Mm-hmm.
itself is produced by their terrain. That is also not produced by their terrain. I don't want to be. That's not what I want to say, but is produced by their interaction with the specific challenges of their terrain, right? But we're talking about China, so I want to stay there, um, and I want to go to East China because so
Yes.
what happens is that the Yangtze empties and pours down through across China because all those rivers move from west to the east,
Mm-hmm.
right? And on the South China Sea, it is emptying into the South China Sea, but it is silt laden, and so it's also increasing the the
Oops.
volume of land on that side.
Let's see what we have here. I have
Yeah,
some. Mm-hmm.
you have to open that up, but you have to go east. You have to really expand that, please.
Let me see. Let me see.
Yeah,
This is not
but
clear. This one is a sort of a broad overview.
yeah, but it's not. I don't think it's necessary. I don't.
Okay.
We're fine. Yeah,
All
we're
right.
fine.
All right.
Yeah,
All right.
so we can. So basically, you get this huge siltation to that
Mm-hmm.
side, which actually means that on that side of China, it
Mm-hmm.
is expanding.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
Yep.
when it built the Three Gorges Dam, built
Mm-hmm.
this huge dam for right, which actually is such a large project that it it changed the way that the world rotates on its axis.
Mm. I
Okay.
don't remember reading that. That sounds important.
Well, yes, I mean because the problems of some of the and this is about coordination because the coordination requirement. So often when you see rich circumstances, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you see, okay, they produce a lot of agriculture. You really have to. What I'm saying is, you really have to drill into the geological, the geographic, and the climatic circumstances to understand how they shape sociology. That's what I'm saying.
And that
Yeah.
is, from a disciplinary point of view, from a classical political science introduction to terms and uses of
Yes.
of diploma worthy, master worthy political science, you are speaking from outside the paradigmatic, definitions and closures. The paradigmatic enclosures might open for geostrategy a little bit into geology and
Yeah.
geopolitics. In the military domain, it might open for that for tactical and strategic rationality. But the theoretically informed, methodologically informed political science, that is far out, far out. What is this gentleman talking about?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing about it is that um, I don't want to have to listen to Kantian nonsense for the next 500 years. For so we have to
Hmm.
be able to. We really have to think, right?
But
Because
I
some
did
of the
find the guy
so
useful.
hold on. No,
He's
no, that's not what
useful.
I'm saying. What I'm talking about is the kind of racist and stupid assumptions that I had to deal with,
That's the problem.
right, in my
That's the
education. And I'm dealing with people who are supposed to be this. Oh, everybody's talking about them, and the word is Lord. I'm reading it. I'm so okay. Well, this bit I get. I really appreciate that. But here I have to say you're an ass. Yeah,
That's it. That's it.
and yeah, and
That's it.
so
I've been there.
and so and so and then somebody might come to me and they're justifying some position. Well, can't say so, or Ibn Khaldun says so. 'Cause I criticize Ibn Khaldun too,
Hmm.
right? I'm Khaldunian, right? But he's not beyond reproach,
Mm-hmm. Tech, yeah.
and so you are obligated to think, right? Especially when you see that you are replicating circumstances that are not in your interest,
Mm-hmm.
and you're doing so generationally. It is absolutely imperative upon you to think.
Mm-hmm.
And if you cannot think past the strictures of that particular way of okay, that particular knowledge system,
Yes.
which you must accept also propagates its power system, then you're not doing politics,
Yes.
right? You have to be able to think beyond that.
Well, as accurate as what you say is, disciplines are defined, and students find their disciplines, and
Well,
then
good. Well, good for them. That's not suitable for everybody.
that's the way it
You
is.
know.
That's the way it is. Yeah, and as we always point out, academic disciplines and the definitions sustaining the daily business of such academic institutions is closely related to the hegemonic power, the sphere of which they are operating in as academic facilities.
Well,
And
I found something really interesting because it's dealing with your question.
mm,
When I go to university and so on, and they're telling me that if I want to make a change, this is what I have to do.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I, I should become a Marxist or a or a
Centrist liberal.
or a anarchist.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at my own traditions and I'm saying, but they're not actually representing any of the political positions that I can see here that don't have a name in that system, but I can see it's systematic. It's, right,
Oh, that don't
right.
have a name in that system.
So, so,
Mm-hmm.
and I also realized at one point that it was not in my interest to name it because if it was swallowed into that system, it was going to be domesticated, right?
Sidelined, destroyed.
Yeah. So I, I, I actually do, as I studied and I refused to name it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in that. So that's when I talk about that politically you must have opacity,
That is so important you would say this
right?
because now you've put a finger on something that I've noticed a couple of times with you, and I never knew what was. Why is it so? You don't plaster the path you're going to lay your explanation on with prefatory kind of apologies for not conceding to the dominant disciplinary jargon. You don't do all that. You just you just place your terms, and then uh, it's on you to figure it out if
No,
you have the wherewithal to understand or not.
yeah, because I come from something. I don't come from nothing, right? So I don't have to justify myself to you. I come from something, right?
Even if you don't have a name for it.
Even if I refuse to name it.
No, no, not you. Sort of, this is what
Yes,
one would
yes,
tell the
yeah.
hegemon,
Oh, yes.
right? I understand. I understand that you do not have a name for this, and I understand that from that derive derogatory, you know, uh, derogatory epithets for what you just
Hmm.
witnessed, which for which
Yes.
you have no terms. And having observed that quality, I have see no obligation to comply to make it intelligible to you.
Yes.
And interestingly, that in itself is I think from the point of view of recorded history and having tested the substance of the recorded history, I think it is quite understandable that knowledgeable people would say there's no need to explain this stuff to you anymore. It's been 500 years. It's been, you've had enough time to get clued in, and
But
you're still behaving like a
the thing
like
about it is that the thing about okay. I think we drifted a bit, but don't mind.
Mhm.
The the thing about it is that none of these ways, okay, the corpus that produces that kind of stupidity is a it is a project of perpetual labor. It's like Sisyphus. It's like Sisyphus. You gotta keep pushing that boulder up. and then somebody comes and he just blow it, and I keep pushing it up, right? It's a project of.
Are you speaking of the researcher now, the analyst, or now
I'm talking about maintaining that knowledge system, which must make an effort to posit certain types of people in particular kinds of places and all of that kind of nonsense. That is a Sisyphean labor. That's why I call it stupid. You gotta keep pushing that stone, that boulder up the hill, and trying to keep it up there, right? And so that what you when you invest
Mm-hmm.
in proving that you're okay to it, all you're doing is joining in the Sisyphean labor,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And because if something is so damn stupid, then you know, leave the fool and get on with what you have to do.
Yeah.
Because the 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 friction of reality itself is going to prove it to you,
Yes, the friction of reality itself.
right? So
Let's
just keep doing, right?
let's let's zoom in a little bit, if possible, still on Southeast Asia, the and the East China Sea.
Yeah.
If we drill into that, I have a prefatory question. Since we're talking about geological, geographic, climatic constraints, determining or revealing habitual macropolitical behavior through space and time, speak a little bit on what the relation is between the U.S.'s flow habits and how that relates to the East, the South China Sea and the East China Sea, how those two things or three things relate to each other. One is a flow
Okay.
system and another is an actor.
Okay. So what? Okay. So I think you need to step back because one of the
Mm-hmm.
reasons I loved going into China in that way
Mm-hmm.
is that it really explains the United States as a continental power. Okay.
Tell us more. How so?
Because w- the United States as a continental power,
Yes.
um, it is based upon commodities, tobacco, right,
Mm-hmm.
cotton,
Mm-hmm.
utilizing slave labor,
Mm-hmm.
um, um, American ginseng for export to China. Yeah, beavers,
We do not
beef,
ask it.
yeah,
Yeah.
beaver skin, beaver fur
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
hats. Yeah, bison pelts for leather for the yeah. So it and gold and other minerals, etc. So
Mm-hmm.
because you're dealing with a continental mass, right? You are able. So the United, our Turkey is part of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it
Mm-hmm.
also once it stabilized itself and began to produce surpluses, that processing depth was very likely to follow, and it did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the emergence of the United States in that period from the 1860s to 1910
Mm-hmm.
as a major industrial power,
Yes.
okay, became it also in that way with also with the habit of technological innovation
Yes.
mirrors China, right? Similar circumstances,
Hmm.
all right? It's just a
Hmm.
younger nation.
That's a very interesting truth claim. I'd have to,
Yeah.
you know, I'd have to.
And then you have defensibility.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Pacific on one side, Atlantic on the other,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
No comparable power next to it. You have to project power so far that, right. So it's a very similar, I think,
Interesting. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which none of the other European powers, except Russia, who they don't accept as European,
But then, how do
had.
you explain the persistence? I mean, we there would have to be a checklist that would allow for the statement where they are comparable and where they differ. But the U.S. tendency, hegemonically speaking, the U.S. doctrine reveals a habit, a civilizational habit of power projection. I don't know how many, 250 years of its existence, only 2 to 5 years have been without
Yeah.
external power force utilization for
Okay.
subjection.
Now you're moving to another aspect. What I was talking about here is how you end up with the kinds, because how you end up with. So, okay, the one thing about the United States
Mm-hmm.
is that it does not have the challenges of flooding and etc. in the same way as China. It
Mm.
doesn't have those extremes in that same way as China,
Mm-hmm.
right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they had the Dust Bowl problem,
Yes.
right, with with the agriculture. But it didn't have. So you're actually dealing with a nation that it doesn't. The survival coordination threshold is much lower than the Chinese one, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So you can have a very different imagination of the political.
The survival coordination threshold. I'd like to hold on to that for
Hmm.
subsequent conversations. The survival coordination threshold is lower or higher, and in relation comparable from a geological, geographical, and climatic point of view. I think that's something to keep at the back of our minds as we proceed.
Yeah.
The survival
Yeah.
and a coordination threshold.
Yeah. So how you can imagine individual freedoms, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to obligations is very different. Okay. In a society like China, you really have to focus on obligations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, because yeah, the terrain demands it. Yeah. Um. Yeah. So
Yeah,
so
but how does that explain? Wouldn't that, in fact, be antithetical to the U.S.'s proven empirical performance in being a warlike,
no,
penetrative?
you're now moving to something else. I'm trying
Still,
to stay away from that because the dynamics of that are very different.
because
Yeah.
they're from the psycho political realm.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know that as this conversation is going, there's a bigger and bigger question mark about how the world system perspective relates to the psycho political system.
But I have a there's a way that I've dealt with that. If I send you the latest one of
Mm-hmm.
the manual, you'll see.
Mm-hmm.
But um, n- you're now asking questions about. You have to remember the Europeans made the world system.
Oh, that's a good point.
People traded in regional systems,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then they had these transposition zones,
Mm-hmm.
right? Often concealing one zone from the other.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, I'm having a problem. I can't scroll on the messages because I've been trying to look at the message and keep track. And Hafsa, thank you. That Tony Morrison thing is yes. That is when I read that by Tony Morrison, I said, okay, I'm not the only one. Thank God.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Um. Yeah. Not waste time having to explain. If somebody thinks that you know if somebody is going to look at your talent and have to explain it away by saying that you're somehow inferior, then well, good luck to them, right? I don't have to waste time because if you're going to be in that level of denying what is in front of your face, then you are
Mm-hmm.
that peculiar kind of jackass I had no time for,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. So yeah, I can't scroll. So
Um,
so
um, yeah.
so let me okay. So they built this system of trade flows,
Yes.
okay, with lex mercatoria, which is the law of merchants,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which, because of the kinds of challenges that merchants have, was it had regional they were using a lex mercatoria developed really in the Mediterranean system,
Yes. 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 Mm-hmm.
okay, and so they applied that with what was that German legal thinker who the law of the sea. What's in Latin? I can't remember. Whatever. So
Um,
anyway, so
let me
the,
check
the,
that quickly.
it doesn't really matter, man. The
Mm-hmm.
point is that so when the Americans came, they joined the the dominant European power would always
Oh,
they would fight for the control of
you
the
were-
system, right?
did you
As the
mean
hegemon.
Grotius?
Huh?
Did you mean Grotius?
Yeah,
Grotius.
yeah, yeah. That's
Okay.
that's what I was thinking. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's good.
So the habit of the Europeans is that whoever dominates the system can become, fights for hegemonic control of it,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And the British basically dominated it. The French were the closest, but they were
And
small in comparison.
I'm sorry to say, but the most annoying aspect of the I don't like that word, but of the awakening from the dominant psychosymbolic blur that people are programmed with. The first thing you awaken to, among other things, is we're still in that system. It's still the same mechanism. There's a veneer and discursive kind of
Yeah, but
distraction.
but we don't have time to waste with that. What we're looking at is we have to look at what the system is,
The system is
right?
that
So
hierarchy above.
your discomfort with the system don't mean that you're not in it. And if you don't understand the system,
Hmm.
right, then you cannot change it.
It is
So
hierarchy
understand the
based.
system. Get over yourself
Hmm.
and understand what you're in.
And this is such an important call to reflection because being in that system, being a centrist or liberal or conservative, thinking in that system is thinking in a container, in a bubble that ignores the larger ranked hierarchy that these
Okay.
bubbles are interlocked in.
Yeah. So what you're seeing here is my struggle to 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 rise above, right, in terms of the capacity to see
Mm,
into and panoramically
mm,
the, what the system that I am embedded in,
mm-hmm,
right, in a way it that does not that does not deny it and
mm.
does not deny me,
Yes,
right?
yes, that makes sense. That
Because
makes sense.
what happens is that you are valid. What it says to you is that you are valid if you can prove this to me. So I'm doing. Why would I have to prove anything to you?
Mm.
Like, who are you? You know,
I
you know.
mean, the reason why swaths of humanity feel the need and the necessity or the pressure to justify themselves is because of the hegemonic nature of Western discourse. If you have more than 1.2 children per couple, per family, something is wrong with you. You're traditionalist and you're destroying
Read this book.
the global bourgeoisie. There you go.
Read this book.
and it's a power relation. Class consciousness is required to read the political economy of class relations.
No,
And
no, no.
what
This
people,
is not. No, no. This is not about class relations.
but about the political economy, perhaps,
This
or
no. This is about a civilizational vision.
mm,
Right. This is we are part of a bourgeois civilization.
all right,
Right. When people talk about bourgeois, when I talk about bourgeois, I'm saying we are part of a bourgeois civilization that emerges out of a world system trading culture.
all right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But
With
there we have political economy again. If it
yes,
emerges out of a trade system,
yes. But my point is that the focus of Marxist and other political economies on class relations,
mm,
that's not where I am.
I
I'm
get
just
what you're
telling you,
saying. Mm-hmm. Broader
right?
lens. You have a broader
Yes,
lens.
yes. I not get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and I know that I know that that makes me
Teetering
a
close to anathema. Anathema. What he's doing over here.
blasphemy. I
Can
tell
he
you,
even think? Is he even do you even think if you don't think in these categories?
yeah, yeah. So, and that's what I'm talking about is that it renders you unable to think in the performance of thinking,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? Because it just
Mhm.
gives you these pre-presented categories which you cannot question.
And if you do think outside of these categories, you are a
Yeah.
heretic. Something's wrong with you.
Well, good. That is good. Okay. So the point here is that in the building of that system, so you have to understand it is how the Europeans came to understand power,
Mm.
right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and that and that's why I started with the Cartaz system of the
Mm.
Portuguese, to understand that that is the world system. So, when you're turning so okay, so what you have here is, and here's the difference. The reason why I'm giving you the similarity between between China and the United States,
Mm-hmm.
right, is what you'll see often with European strategists is they will assume that whoever comes is going to do exactly what they did. This is called projection,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
right? But here you have another civilization with another rationale, and you cannot understand that rationale, I believe, unless you drill into it in at least a similar manner to the way that I have.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the
Yes.
point.
Yes.
Okay. Um, and I think I'm finished.
Right.
I think I'm done.
Well, that is a couple of.
Unless people have questions, and I don't.
Let me
I
see
think
if I
we have
can
a
read.
question.
I see comments, but I don't see questions. The technological innovation and its historic process does not distinguish between nations, race, or ethnicity. So it was, I would add. Everyone is subject, be they Chinese, Italian, or Nigerian. I would agree with that, but I feel very much that now it's become public more and more that certain technologies are being produced that are um, DNA sensitive, genome specific sensitivity. Uh, you know, I think we should look at that, that there are people who are now definitely not above furthering that kind of technology.
Oh, well, I could do that in my garage.
Genetically sensitive.
Gene editing I can do in my garage.
Oh,
It's
that's what you mean. Yeah, but then they further, technological innovation in the direction they've been saying that it's for medical purposes. I'm.
okay. All I'm going to say to you,
Mm-hmm,
and you consider that when I say to you that I could do gene editing in my garage,
mm-hmm.
I want you to consider the implications of what I just said.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Plausible deniability if one takes it very
No,
far.
that's not what I'm saying.
If one takes it very far. But
No, I'm saying that if I could do that in my garage,
decentralization.
it is now completely decentralized,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? For 10K, 10 to 15K, I can build a pretty good pipeline in my garage with what I know already.
Mm. So the splicing machine, is this for the study or for the application?
Application. I could take,
10,000.
yeah, at 10 to 15,000, I could take
But
fish genes and put them in a tomato.
how are
Take,
you
then do that. Then take the tomato and fish gene and then put it in a cow. You
I,
know, I can do all that.
I, what are these techniques called? Splicing and other such
It,
techniques.
it, the, all of that gene editing and all that. Right now
That is available at
that
10,000 already.
I 10 to 15,000 pounds. If I know what with what I know, I could build that. I'm not interested.
I had no idea. I was thinking 80, 100,
No, no, no. It's not that
150,000.
expensive. That's the point I'm
Mm,
making.
okay. That's interesting. So it's entirely decentralized and at the mercy of whoever is proactive in those domains.
Yes, the genie is out of the bottle.
Yes.
Pandora has opened the box.
I mean, all right. It could be for good or for bad.
Okay, so
Can be for good or for bad. All right. So we've arrived at the point today in the world systems conversation where we've spoken about uh, what is your contention that there is merit in reading macro political human collective behavior as a function or as variables of a larger equation that include and integrate spatial manifestations of geological, geographic, and climatic nature.
I,
It is a
I,
function. Our
I,
politics are a function of those
I'm
three.
saying something a little more radical. I'm saying that you cannot understand
Well,
human organization
hmm
without understanding the terrain out of which it comes.
hmm, hmm. And it's the intensity with which you say that that is the difference to how it is normally said. Because you're saying, no, no, everything you're seeing here is a function related to those pre-established.
I'm saying that if you are dealing with things in that environment,
Mm,
right? When it gets dark, it gets dark.
period.
Right?
Mm,
When it gets bright, it gets bright.
mm.
When it's hot, it's hot. When it's cold, it's cold. That shapes you. You cannot escape that.
So your argument is actually to include the implications of these constants into our political
If you are not
discourse.
including the implications of these contents in your understanding of the political,
Mm,
then you're missing, you know, then you're going to turn around then you're going to turn around and go to somebody and you look at them in their situation. You say, you must become a democracy. You must do this. You must do that. You must do it like this. This is how you do it.
that's
And it doesn't work. And you say, and when it doesn't work, you turn around to them and you say, well, it's because you people are too damn stupid or too lazy or too this and then I'm looking at the situation. How you expect that to work there? Like, how do you expect that to work there?
Wow, this is fascinating because
Right?
now, this is a
You
fascinating
you
conversation.
you think the Chinese can vote on whether to handle the Yangtze?
It will flood.
Right?
It must be mastered. It must be contained. It must be. Hmm.
Yeah,
If
along the over the centuries, by Chinese people themselves building the
mm,
levees, raise the level of the Yangtze above the land.
hmm
Okay, so if they do not maintain those levees, they're dead. Okay,
you know
so
how many people would be affected by this? Do you know how many would
what
be talking?
with the density of population? I don't know. You're talking about dense populations. Okay,
And somebody
and
said the unit of analysis for anything population related demographic with China compared to Europe is 1 to 10.
Yes, I'm trying. I mean, European cities are fairly small,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're not large. Like the Tokyo metropolitan area is like
Mm-hmm.
in the hundreds of millions.
Yep.
Is it? Is it? I'm not sure. Hold on.
I
Yes.
mean, I think
Check
so
it. Check
too.
it for me.
I think so too. Let's see. So let me see.
Population of Tokyo metropolitan area.
I think so too.
Okay. I need to.
2024. It says 30, 37 to 37.4 million.
Okay. Sorry. Yes. Sometimes I get.
That's quite no, but that's even more, right?
No, no. I was hundreds of million.
You
That's
said
why I got.
hundreds.
That's yes. That's why I got suspicious of myself because
Mm-hmm.
I went. But Alex, do you know what 100 million people are? Yes. Oh God, that don't make any sense.
Okay, okay. That
That's
says
why. Yes.
37, 37. But I mean, it's not that big. It's not a categoric, I mean,
No, it was
I
it,
understand. I understand.
it, it,
37
it was
million.
it was very wrong and
But
not
does
very smart.
well, I get it. I understand that.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, no, no, to
But does
call
it
yourself out,
defeat
man.
but does that error in size defeat the point you were trying to make? That's the question.
No, no, I don't think so. But
That's the
yeah,
point. Oh,
well,
that's the point.
but it is what we call an inflated claim.
Yeah, it's inaccurate. But that's
Yeah,
fine. That's fine. That's good we checked it.
yeah,
But it doesn't defeat the point you were trying to make,
yeah.
which is that the topography has a determinant effect on uh, demographic development, among other things.
Yes,
And that is actually very interesting. What does that tell us about Nigeria? An incredibly populous place. And what you're saying, I mean, the entire Nilotic history, the history of pharaonic Egypt is in and of itself a function of the availability and the behaviors of the Nile.
yes, the the geological region out of which it emerges, right? You can see the constraints it places. But that would be starting a whole other
A
conversation.
whole
I
other
don't think. Yeah,
conversation. But we've seen
yeah,
it
yeah.
regarding China. And if you were to say it in 3 or 4 sentences, takeaways from the core today, what would you say the 3 or 4 takeaway sentences for as it relates to the world system
Well, I've
analysis?
been talking about it so much. I would prefer you to tell me.
Oh, so what are my takeaways? What are my takeaways? Please also in the comment section, if there are takeaways, please add them in. I'll just
Hmm.
go first. Takeaways from this conversation really is to dare to explore um, such an analytical claim, such a paradigm, despite despite all the disciplinary paradigmatic constraints of our minds, those of us that are trained intramuros academically, in political science. You're not going to look at these geological things with the same facility as you are doing it here. But if you wish to avoid such short sightedness and the frustration that comes with um, having policy propositions that come from the psychopolitical, psychosymbolic domain rather than from the world systems geoanalytical domain, you might want to look into what is being offered here. You might want to look at expanding the primitives by those that are included in this approach rather than the foreclosure they fall into if you're coming from a mainstream, from a hegemonic discourse paradigm,
Thank you.
right? That's that's what I see there. Let me see whether someone else has. When did egalitarian domain trade of many become the exclusivity of a few cartels? When did egalitarian domain trade
I
of
can't
many?
answer that.
become the exclusivity of few cartels.
I cannot. That one is a whole session.
You
That
know,
can't be said.
you know what came to mind? The Marxist discourse would say original accumulation. Is that would be my knee jerk answer from that angle?
I I I don't like knee jerk answers. I like answers that I like. In that sense, I'm Foucauldian,
Mm, mm,
right?
mm,
I
mm,
like you must excavate your answers,
mm,
right?
mhm,
Right?
mhm.
So that you don't so that you allow yourself the space to think.
Yes, so that you allow yourself the space to think. I love that. Allowing
Mhm.
yourself the space to think. That is actually quite it's also Jungian a little bit. You have to observe your shadows as well. You have to include your shadows into your active
But
thinking.
in this sense, I take that from a tradition I inherited from like my grandfather.
Mm,
Is that you must you have to every day we would sit down sometimes for an hour and a half to 2 hours, sometimes chewing a small question,
mm-hmm,
literally chewing the small question. And also almost like and also it was like meditation. It was a form of meditation. And so that effective thinking of that nature is slow.
mm-hmm.
And it is like chewing your cud, right? And and it's done patiently.
Patiently and slowly, gradually, with persistence, not with
Mhm.
with
Yeah.
speed.
And my grandfather was a man who he would say to me, what? He would say, Alex, your grandfather's a genius. He didn't, he didn't, he wasn't shy about his capacity.
Oh, that's that's a good one. That's a good one. So
And
here,
then
Hafsa.
I would say, grandfather, your grandson is a genius. He said, genius, genius, genius. Yeah, but my grandfather really
Mm,
invested time in teaching me to think.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
All right.
That's fascinating. That's absolutely fascinating. Hafsat is saying here, from what I am hearing from you, brother Alex, the two world views, the US Western one and the Chinese one, puts them in conflict. One demands domination, the other self sufficiency, which rejects domination.
I am afraid, Hafsa, I would agree with you, but I have often stayed away from saying that um, because often really one has to justify a position, and it's some and there's a lot of explanation that you have to do to justify that position. But yes, I completely agree with you. That's exactly what I see.
And it would, from that would also flow valid interpretations, I think, of what can be observed the past 30 years as world trade behavior or as patterns of interaction with the other 200, 193 respective states in the world. The Chinese are not forcing their trade partners to become like them politically, ethically,
Oh, no,
socially.
but
They're
you
not.
also have to understand it's because the Chinese don't believe themselves that anybody can become like them.
But the Europeans neither. But they
No, no,
tell
no.
us you can become like
The
us.
Europeans feel that everybody must become like them.
Really? Because we now know, at least latest by the
Well,
time that book came
let me
out.
ask you a question.
Yeah.
When you write a thesis,
Yes.
who do you have to justify it by?
By whoever came. Uh,
Just be
now,
honest, man. Please.
because there are two answers to this. The proper one is
Which papers are seen as
ah
good sources?
well, you have
I
to
mean,
go by the data, not by the source. That's the first
okay, all right. You might have the data, but if you quote data from certain sources,
thing.
right? Is it
You
likely to be more accepted, or if you quote data from other sources, do you have to really defend yourself and bend over backwards?
That's the whole point, because now you're
Okay,
talking the
so
practice of scientific,
okay,
day-to-day
I was just
practice.
using that as a quick example to
Hmm.
show you to justify my position when I say that Europeans mean that you must become like them, right? That is because, and that starts in the theological origin of their imperial
Universalism.
universalism, which was a universalism which starts with Christendom, and as as they secularize, it becomes situated in European identity and the idea of republican freedom.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
so you have to understand. You have to. So I'm not, and I'm not saying this i- um, in a sense to be against something. It doesn't really matter. That is how that's how our world
I agree with you, but
works.
let me throw a wrench in there. Let me throw
Yeah,
a big wrench in there, even
you have
though
9 more minutes. After at 12 o'clock, I'm cutting hard.
wonderful. So here's the wrench. The wrench is, at least by the publication of Factor 4, where we know that if every living human had the same status and standard of living and quality of life and access to
Did you
processed
say if?
goods, when, actually, I should say, once and when the rest of the world, since we've been put
That
on
is
that.
still you still that when is a substitute for if.
All right, but the
So
point
remove if
being,
remove when and say put if and see if it doesn't still work.
the point being, the claim is you need to become us, you need to become like us if you want to have a good quality of life. And in so doing, once that, were that to be achieved, the world would have to have 4 times the resources and and absorption capabilities that it has right now. So there's been an inherent lie in industrialization and the promises of such. There's a lie. There's an impossibility.
I think that the reason why I was so uncomfortable with giving us just a quick answer to those questions
Hmm.
is that I believe that those answers to those questions are excavations. They're not straight assertions,
Mm.
right? And they may surprise us.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm. That sounds, that has a lot of gravitas. I think I'll just leave it at that
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
my end. Let me
Yeah.
see if anyone else has said anything else. Can we start a process, Yusuf Ahmad writes, of summarization that we can send into you where you assess? Oh, that would
Oh,
be
good.
nice.
Then I'd be marking work. I really that I'm struggling as it is.
Mm.
Right? I really am struggling as it is. So I've had a this has been my best week since my recovery, but I'm struggling. I'm loath to put that on myself.
Salim
Yeah.
writes, aren't many talented Western intellectuals moving over to China, breaking out from European rigidity? I'd love to see that, man.
I don't know, but I did business. I doing my thing.
Yeah, I'd love to see that, but it reminds me of one time when I was doing when we had our research facility opened. The newspaper, the largest newspaper, came to interview us. So you have an institution, you're doing this consultancy, etc.
Mhm.
And at some point, I made this beginner's mistake of talking to a regular Western journalist uh, substantially about the comparative cultural political science that I was conducting at that time. And then I said, yeah, so what are you going to be teaching here? And then I said, among other things, and doing research on. And I said, among other things, we'd be looking at um, the cultural specificities of Chinese intellectual practice, of the Chinese intellectual styles. He said, what does that mean? And for politics, undergirding Chinese politics. And then I said, among other things, it would entail looking at the simultaneity of Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism influencing the intellectual universe from where Chinese politics emanate. I did say that. And then a week later, when the article was published, he says, the academic director of the place is very friendly, charming, has a large vocabulary, uh, and is eloquent about his subject matters. But it seems all very new. What's that called? The new in the 80s. There was this new edge. New edge. Is it new edge? It seems like
I don't know.
a whole bunch of new edge mumbo jumbo. Just because I said we're going to look at Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism.
That's my point. It's not valid.
New age. It says new age. He said new age mumbo jumbo.
Yeah, but
In
you have to understand that it's not valid. That's what I'm saying.
you know.
But it doesn't matter. And so what people have to do is to be taken seriously. They don't. I mean, I was looking at I was, you know, the average Western intellectual, I hope they know something about a text like the I Ching,
They don't. The
right?
who? The what?
The I Ching or like the Ifa,
Hmm.
right?
No, of course not.
You,
Of
you,
course not.
so two divination systems
Hmm.
which are exhaustive in tracking permutations of the appearances of existence,
There you go. There you
right?
go. Yes,
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah.
That's it. I'm trying to remember the English author who spent, I don't know, 30, 40 years trying to comprehend Chinese cultural, as many as possible. Newham? Was it Newham?
I don't know. I haven't read about it. Yeah.
Let me see. Was it Newham? New Chinese. Anyhow, I just wanted to contribute that. I see some more comments in here. The European universalism of self-replicating in their image. Aren't many talented Western intellectuals moving over to China?
I think
I
I answered
also
that.
don't see it.
We answered
Not
that.
valid for the when things aren't valid for the master signifier, they can be lucky, whoever presented them, if they are placed in the footnotes.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we're dealing with psychopolitics and
Hmm. Needham. The author's name is Needham.
yeah, Needham. Yeah.
Sort of a very good Joseph Needham is an
Yeah.
extremely good entry point into China
In the
from a
China. Yeah.
Western point of view. From a
Yeah.
Western point of view.
Yeah. Um. Okay. Um. Yes. Basically, the European knowledge system insists that everything must justify itself with regard to it. It is a system of inscription.
Mm-hmm.
So you find your place in inscription, and it takes that it is the most evolved system of knowledge, and so every system of knowledge must be measured by it.
Mm.
Okay, that is a that is a pol- that is a political statement. It is not an epistemology.
Mm.
Okay, and or it is a political habit, not an epistemological one.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so it in itself is harmful to it that in itself is harmful to European knowledge systems themselves.
Yes.
So um, so I don't really waste my time with that. I mean, and I think that what has to happen is that we have to be. This what it's important that we think. Yeah. We learn to that we actually think, and learning to think is something that you should do for the rest of your life,
Mm.
because thinking is an art form that is not, it is not mastered. Right? It is,
Mm-hmm.
it is perpetually learned.
Mm.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm done.
It reminds me of one of my lines in one of my songs where I said, "The mole and the eagle's view. That's how I
Mhm.
stack my clues." And the whole point is about in joining in the micro and the macro into a coherent
Yeah.
overview. Mm.
Yeah. And that's only from one perspective, right? That is from the
Mm.
the perspective of the eagle and the mole's view. But then there's the view from entering within, which is deep empathy,
Mm.
and so on. So there are other, there,
Mm.
there, you will be surprised. You will always be surprised at what you discover in people's very specific traditions of thinking
Mm.
and their epistemological implications. All
Mm.
right. Okay, guys, thank you for staying with
Thank
us
you.
through
Thank you
this.
indeed.
And I hope that you're a bit better aware of the world, of this, kind of world system, um, grammar of is this way of being able to think, to think in flows, and strategically, um, that by actually grasping a grammar and an understanding of how the political is constructed by our terrain,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
On constrained by our terrain. So I think I hope that you're getting that. Eh? All right, listen, it's time for me to go.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to have
Thank you for
a
today. And see you next week, Wednesday, when it's time for Dystopia Unmasked and Sapere Aude, free of disciplinarian mechanisms of different disciplines.
all right. Okay. So
You see how I did cunt some good at the end? Thank you indeed.